What the creepiest things that's happened to you at work? I worked a day job and a night job, and I was in college, so my sleep schedule was really fucked up for several months. One night, I was working alone. I did my work and had a few hours of downtime, so I tried taking a nap. I woke up to what sounded like someone inside the building, screaming nonsensically, and smashing things. Like some psycho broke in and was tearing up the room. I ran to where the sound was coming from, and by then it had stopped. I didn't see anything weird inside the room, everything was perfectly normal. I yelled, "What the fuck was that?" My own voice came out very slow and deep, like when you try talking through a yawn. "What's going on?" Same thing. I looked around the other rooms and even outside. Nothing was out of order. I'm confident it was a hallucination due to lack of sleep. After that I took steps to sort my life out so I could sleep like normal again, and I haven't had any more experiences like that. I'm a nurse on a ward for 33 Alzheimer's patients. During a quiet night shift, I was reading something at the nurse's post in the middle of the central hallway. It was the middle of the night, around 3 or 4, so even the restless patients were asleep. The lights were dimmed, and I was in an ADHD hyperfocus reading my book. All of a sudden I hear a faint child's voice singing a nursery rhyme, "Alle Inge zwemmen in het water," or "All the ducks are swimming in the water." No music, nothing was to be heard except this little child's voice singing this song in the dead of night. I checked the hallway left and right, there was nothing to see, and it was not really clear where the singing was coming from exactly. So I get my broad-shouldered 1.83 meters male body out of the nurse station and start walking around the ward searching for this creepy sound. I can't find it, and I'm starting to wonder if we really are living in a virtual reality world and today is the day TV horror becomes real. And then I find it. We have a certain device that projects several touch games on a white surface table called the Tovertafel, or Magic Table. This device received maintenance that afternoon, and as a courtesy, the company activated all available games, one of them including a girl singing nursery rhymes to sing along with. I used to work as a tour guide for a ghost tour company. Basically I walked people through the city, stopped at important landmarks, and told gruesome stories about what happened and the reported hauntings. Creepy things would happen, like guests seeing faces peering out of windows or them telling me they could see lights floating in windows. It was always the same window, and multiple guests from multiple tours over a 2-year period reported seeing them. The creepiest thing that happened to me while working was my last day. I was standing in front of the door to a house with plenty of ghost stories. This was also the house with the lights. At the end of my story I thanked the guests and told them that this would be my final tour with the company. Everyone clapped, and I started to make my way down the steps. As I started to walk, I heard a voice whisper behind me. Before I could turn around to look, I felt a pair of hands shove me from behind, and I went ass over tea kettle down the stairs. Luckily one of the guests caught me as I was falling. Some of the guests assumed that me falling down the stairs and saying I felt pushed with no one behind me was part of the tour. Great job, great tips, wild last tour. I used to work at a family entertainment center that included a laser tag facility, along with an arcade and other family fun things. Long wall of text ahead, sorry for so much, but I've had lots of experiences. Everyone always talked about the place being haunted, and I never believed it, because I don't typically believe in paranormal stuff. Until I started working in the laser tag facility. Now if you've ever played laser tag, you know it's black lights, so of course when the black and white lights are off, it's pitch black. Like, can't see your hand in front of your face dark. Of course we don't play in the dark, but it's important to note. We worked alone at the laser tag section, and we were responsible for explaining the rules in room 1, helping people get vested up in their gear in room 2, and then having to referee in the arena. So there are 3 different sections to this part of the facility as well as a small office, where I spent a lot of time. The office was inside room 2, just across from the door that led to the arena. Also, the arena had back doors that led to the back of the parking lot. These doors remained locked from the inside at all times but in case of emergency could be used, important for a later incident. My first incident was my first night closing alone. One of the laser tag vests, which had been out of order all day, and was 100% properly sitting on the rack, came flying up and over the rack, into the floor, ripping the charger from it and causing the vest to kick on. That scared the hell out of me. The second incident was Halloween 2013. Working with a coworker this night because it was busy, I was in the office checking vest battery levels while my coworker was outside running the register. There were no games going on, so all the rooms were empty. I heard what sounded like someone running up the ramp towards the vesting room, where the office is also located, and I looked at the door to the arena, fully expecting it to burst open and someone to run through. The footsteps stop, and it goes silent, then there's a loud bang. I jumped and screamed and ran to get my coworker. He opened the door, and we found a shoe on the floor that definitely was not there before. Also, we never found the other one, so that still bothers me when I think about it. Another incident was one night, 2 of our regulars were at the facility for their bowling league. Their kids wanted to play laser tag. I don't remember their exact ages, but at the time I'd say the girl was about 5 or 6, and the boy was probably 7 or 8. Just the 2 of them, and they asked if I'd play too. I agreed, and we went into the arena to play. Midway through the game, the girl pops the corner, and I notice her vest is turned off, which can't happen unless it's done by the computer in the office. Then the music stops, so of course I flip shit and think the lights are going next. I was so sure someone was in the office who wasn't supposed to be. I ran out, threw the office door open, and the computer had crashed. Never happened before. I call the kids in to reset the game, and the little girl says she's scared and doesn't want to play again. I told them okay and that I would refund their parents. I was helping her get the laser tag vest off when she said, "Hey, I have a question." I asked what it was, and she said, "Who was the man in there playing with us?" There was no man in there, it was just me, 19F, at the time and the kids. I told her there wasn't anyone else in there, and she said yes there was, she could show me. She grabs my hand, walks me to the door, and opens it, points up on the ramp, and says, "See, he's right there." I told her I didn't see anything, and she goes, "How can you not see him? His hair is glowing." I had noticed a specific car parked in a lot for a couple of weeks. There was always someone in it, but we all just kind of shrugged our shoulders and thought nothing of it. I was the last one to leave work one evening, and the guy hobbled out of his car and called me over to ask me a question about work. He had 0 questions about my work, vet clinic, other than what time we closed. Which he already knew. The rest were questions about me, where I lived, and what I liked to do. He then pointed out his disability and said that because of that, I couldn't turn him down when he asked for my number. One very important thing to note is that he started to corner me, but I had my Great Dane, my English Mastiff, and my dad's Irish Setter mix kept between me and him. I gave him a fake number, and he started to move towards me, but the Mastiff gave out a deep, low growl and raised his hackles. That was enough to send the guy back to his car, and I hurried and drove the opposite direction of my home. We then made a rule that no one was to leave alone at night, to have one of the men escort us out, and that if anyone came in asking for me, they were to take me to the back and tell them to leave a message, or if it was that guy, to just fucking leave. Good boy, Meaty. He was scared of spoons in his own dog food bowl, but he did his job anyway. This happened to me about 3 years ago when I was working in an advertising agency. I was working very late that night, it was probably close to 3 a.m., and as far as I could tell, I was probably the only one there at the time. If you were to walk into my department, you would see what is essentially a long and wide hallway with tall, wooden cupboard desks on the left and right. The left would have 4 desks where the directors/seniors would sit, while the right would have about 8 desks arranged to create a cubicle space for the juniors. This arrangement is repeated 4 times along the hallway, essentially creating 4 segments of space that belong to a different team/brand. This also naturally creates an aisle walkway right through the middle. I have an aisle seat in the 3rd section. So when I sit down, I can't see directly in front of me because it's the tall cupboard desk thing. But leaning to the side, I can basically see the whole length of the hallway with a clear view of the desks in the 1st section. The 1st section belonged to a milk brand, so the top of their cupboards was stacked with many samples of milk cartons of different designs. So that night, as I was the only one there, only my section was lit with the ceiling fan on. I was typing emails and was already feeling uneasy with how dark the whole office is and the fact that it's fucking 3 a.m., aka the witching hour. And it didn't help that my brain was reminding me of all the office horror stories my colleagues have shared over the years, like how this building was built over a damn graveyard. And suddenly, I heard a clattering of items, and I immediately peeked my head out only to see down the hallway that nearly all the milk cartons at the 1st section had fallen. Looking up, the ceiling fan was off. Mind you, there's no way the airflow from my section caused that because the space between our sections is very big. So, if that wasn't a sign telling me to GTFO of the office now, then I'd what was. Slammed my laptop shut, shoved it into my bag, and went straight home. I had a tiny t-shirt shop in a mall when I was young. One day a girl came in at lunch and was at first like a normal customer. She was flirting with me way more than as usual. She hung on to my every word. She stayed most of the afternoon. She had just gotten a job at the Army recruiters, and they locked her out of the office at lunch with no way to get back in. I finally got rid of her for a few hours by sending her on an errand. When she came back, I had friends around and asked them to stick around because something was off. They all agreed that she gave off a weird vibe. The next day she came around, same thing, and she told me that she was molested by her father and that she was given a job and an apartment as emergency to get her away from him. Thanks to my friends hanging around, I wanted to not be anywhere alone with this girl. I didn't see her again. A few days later, a guy shows up in the morning asking about her. He says that he heard she was seen at my shop and that he just wants to marry her off to whoever she is with. He was creepy as fuck. The guy spent 13 hours outside my store watching like a hawk. Night shift working at a small boutique hotel that had previously been a very shady truck stop style motel, AIDS hospice, and generally unseemly place. During the night shift, the only people on staff were myself and the bartenders, who worked on the other side of the property. The front desk and lobby where I worked were carved out of a couple of rooms in the largest of the property's buildings. The back office area was a room that opened directly into the lobby, and then through a door in the back was a small room with a desk and bathroom in it. That night the front desk area, which always was cold, kept heating up with this hot, stuffy air. The AC unit was right outside the office door, and I could hear it running. The temperature gauge in the room read in the low 70s, and when I checked the vents, it felt like it was blowing cool, but every once in a while the hot air would pass through the room. I wasn't too bothered since ACs act up all the time, and there was an old attic above the rooms that might trap heat, so I just brushed it off. But, as the night went on, I started to get really strong feelings of uneasiness. Going in and out of the smaller room with the bathroom, I'd feel like someone was right behind me. I'd turn around, and of course nothing would be there. By the end of my shift I felt completely unnerved. Between the blasts of heat and the feeling of being watched all night, I couldn't get out of the office fast enough. The next day when I came into work, I asked my boss if anything weird ever happened in the lobby area. Without skipping a beat, she said, "Oh, yeah, there was a fire in here when this place was still a motel." The manager's room was the back room, and one night he was smoking in bed, fell asleep, and the bed caught fire. He didn't get out and ended up dying in the fire in the room. They merged the rooms into this office when they did the renovations to repair it. And that's how I learned the hotel was haunted. My much older, male coworker kept staring at me, and I tried ignoring him, but he came really close to me, so I asked him what's up. He asked me, "Why do you have on a pink mask?" "The plain ones are fine," so I laughed a little and said, "Oh, I have it because I think it's pretty." Somehow that led to him telling me sotto voce, "You think you're so smart, huh? Someday you'll fall from that high horse of yours, and I will enjoy watching you on the way down. It's no good being this stuck up." It chilled me to the bone. I have zero idea what he has against me, but I want to cry every time I have to talk to him. He keeps staring at me and coming uncomfortably close and saying vaguely threatening and sexual remarks. "Why don't you report him?" "Because this happened in front of multiple people and they all laughed, and he has seniority, and I only have the drive to last a while longer at this job." I've talked about this one before, but I think it fits here. A couple years ago I was on shift alone late at night on floor 6 of an enormous department store. No other employees in eyeshot, no way to call security. A guy came into the store and started checking out sports clothes in an unattended area near me. He caught sight of me and asked for help. The dude was probably in his mid to late 40s, somehow soaking wet even though his clothes were dry, shaking, with an uneven shave, and clearly just generally out of it. He was also about half a foot taller than me. I was a 19-year-old girl alone at 8 p.m. with him. I cannot stress this enough, it could have gone so wrong. I had no backup and no hope of overpowering him if shit got physical. There were no other staff anywhere near me, no security guards on the floor, and no other customers. The security cameras also weren't working, not that he would have known that. It was literally just me and him in this huge department store, big enough that if I'd needed to yell for help, there was a chance I wouldn't have been heard over the music and chatter downstairs. All I could do was put on my best customer service face and pray it was enough. He was drinking something serious from a bottle in a brown paper bag and even lit a cigarette in front of me, and I just kept on smiling. This guy had just come into some huge amount of cash and was intent on spending it all on sportswear. I helped him find probably 20 Adidas hoodies over the course of an hour or so. We chatted and bantered a little, and I slowly started to feel like he wasn't a threat. He was just in a very weird place mentally. I got the feeling it was a combination of a serious drinking problem and probably ASD. At the end of it, he actually stopped to thank me and said something along the lines of, "Most people see me and try to turn the other way, but you helped me and treated me like a friend. Thank you so much." It was actually really heartwarming, and I think about that guy pretty regularly now. Hope he's doing okay. I'm choosing to overlook the fact that the money was probably shady as hell. So yeah, the experience itself wasn't bad. But after that happened, I realized that I, and all the other girls who worked shifts in that area of the store, was very much living in a Wild West situation out there. We were in an area of town where meeting people drunk or high on the street wasn't uncommon, and I just so happened to luck out and meet the friendliest drunk of all time. The next one probably wouldn't be so chill. I've refused to take late night city shifts ever since. I was in our dry storage area getting paper supplies to put in the dumbwaiter at the restaurant I work for. The building itself is now about 70 years/0, so there were 2 small swinging doors that only swing one way that lead to the area that holds the dumbwaiter. To hold the door open, I put a fire extinguisher at the base of one of the doors, allowing me just enough space to move in/out with big boxes. So, the fire extinguisher is in place, the dumbwaiter is open, and I start to pile up stuff in my arms and carry it over to the dumbwaiter. But swinging doors are shut, and the fire extinguisher is moved. The practical part of my brain is like, oh shoot, I only thought about holding the door and just never set up the fire extinguisher properly. I drop my stuff, prop the door, and pack the dumbwaiter. I still have more stuff to grab, so I return to the dry storage area and pile my arms up again. When I get back to the doors, they are shut again. Thinking it might be someone fucking with me, I prop the doors and repeat the previous steps. When I return, the doors are shut again, and I just drop the rest of my stuff and hightail it back downstairs. I was so freaked out, I wouldn't go back upstairs alone for months. What I saw later freaked me out even more. There is CCTV in this restaurant and 3 cameras that observe all the paths that lead to the part of the area that the dumbwaiter is in, but no camera observing the actual dumbwaiter. There is no evidence of anyone but me using the dry storage for about 12 hours. You can see people coming and going, but no one just stays. Meaning we cannot account for a person that moved the fire extinguisher. There is a lot of talk on the units of nuns. They are the ghosts of the building because it's an odd old hospital. There are no more actual nuns at the hospital. There is the white ghost, and there is the black ghost. The color of fabrics, patients and staff all talk about these nuns. Patients on their deathbeds will all describe them exactly the same. The white nun is a comforting ghost, usually seen going into someone's room who needs her. The black ghost is, you guessed it, the ghost of death. So I was sitting on the couch on a night shift in the palliative unit, dying patients, but I was on the long-term side. So patients are still pretty far away from actively dying. I saw a person in a long black dress go into the one man's room. I just checked on his room, he was fine and had no visitors. He had no family nor ever had visitors. I was nosy and peeped into his room to see who would have visited him since he had nobody. But when I went into the room, he was gone. He had passed on. To this day, 10 years later, I am still convinced that was the nun paying him a visit. Another story on that unit, I was on the short-term side, and I was staring at this creepy china cabinet with dolls that all have been donated over the years. The back of the cabinet had a mirror, and I saw myself in the reflection. I then saw my favorite patient behind me, so I turned to say something to him, and then he was gone. Poof. There was a long hallway behind me. Nowhere for a 95-year-old patient to run and hide. So I went to his room to give him heck for scaring me, and there he was. Passed away in his bed. He had already been gone for 20 minutes, and his family was grieving over him, and the nurse was there going over next steps. I'm an electrician. I got hit with 277 volts for what felt like an eternity until I fell backwards off my ladder. It was super painful and very scary. It almost made me quit the entire trade. A few months later, I took Molly with my roommate. It was a very fun experience, but we ended up taking multiple doses in a row until it basically had no effect on us, which, in retrospect, was pretty dumb. A day later, I woke up from a dead sleep at 2 in the morning, being electrified from my left hand to the back of my right shoulder. It was an intense, pulsing pain, indistinguishable from when I was being hit with 277 volts, as in, I could feel the damn 60 Hz alternating current. I woke up screaming and absolutely terrified. I jumped out of the bed, and the pain stopped. I was so scared to touch anything metal in my room, unsure what I had touched in my sleep that had shocked me. I went to my car to get my multimeter and began testing my bed frame and the lamp near my bed. I thought maybe my fan cord could have frayed and applied voltage to either source without tripping a breaker. I couldn't find anything that was hot that shouldn't be. When I couldn't find a physical reason for my experience, I briefly dipped away from my atheism and back into my young adult Christianity and worried that I had been possessed or something. It was so scary and painful and freakishly unexplainable. I didn't make the potential connection to the Molly at the time, that it took me hours to calm down and go back to sleep. This happened about once every 3 weeks for a year, even though I moved to a new home during that year. Eventually, I began waking up before actually screaming and learned to convince myself quickly enough that it wasn't real that I wouldn't rise to hysterics, instead allowing the adrenaline to pass and eventually falling back to sleep. In the following 8 years, it has only happened twice more, and neither time did I actually scream or freak out, but the whole experience still scared the hell out of me. Happened to me at my friend's office. 3 of us had supper nearby, and we accompanied my friend back to his workplace to pick up his stuff. My friend turned on an inner light and went into the darkened office. I waited for him at the reception area while the third guy waited outside at the lift lobby. I was seated on a couch, which was against a wall, with a pillar somewhat in front of me. I'm just gazing out the windows at the other offices when suddenly, there's a shadow of a person walking by cast on the pillar. The fuck? Nothing had gone by me. My friend reappeared with his retrieved backpack, and I asked if there's anyone else in the office. It's just him because it's 10 p.m. Everyone's gone home. I told him we better head off quick, and we stepped out into the lift lobby. We saw on the screen that the lifts had started moving on their own from the ground floor, and opened on our floor without us pressing the call button. It's a bloody old building, there are no special lift sensors whatsoever to detect us. I was scared stiff. We got in and quickly got out. Months after, the lift crashed with people in it. Thankfully no one was hurt. The building was demolished not too long after. When I was in high school, I had a job at a family-style pizzeria. It was mostly regulars and their kids. I had this guy come in and order a beer and a cheese pizza, small. I saw where the guy was sitting and took a mental note. When his food was ready, I delivered it to his table, but he was gone, bathroom probably, and I left it there. He came back to the counter like 20 minutes later and said, "Is my food done yet? I've been waiting for, like, half an hour." I told him I left it on his table and said he had moved because there was some kid's birthday party and children were running around everywhere. I checked the pizza, and it was completely untouched, and the kids weren't even in his vicinity. I offered it to him, but he said no, he needs a new pizza because one of the kids could have touched it. My boss said fine, and the customer started telling me I'm an asshole and a shitty employee for not knowing he moved off the alcove, as if I'm keeping track of him, etc. I was 17 and getting pissed off because I genuinely was a very polite and respectful worker even in the face of drunk or unruly customers. You know what? Fuck you, kid. And fuck this place, too, he yelled as he started to walk out. As he did, I sarcastically responded with, "Okay, have a good day, sir." He turned around and threw a punch at me and missed completely, as there were at least 2 feet between the counter and him and me. He tried to hop it, but my boss pulled out a rifle and aimed it at him. "Do it, you big pussy," the customer said so that everyone at the kid's birthday could hear. "What time are you off work, you little brat? Huh? Come fight me, I'll be waiting for you, bitch." This man was in his late 40s or early 50s, so for me it was kind of intimidating. I got pretty uncomfortable and called one of my buddies, an ex-convict covered in tattoos who was very tall and very good at not taking anyone's shit. He was nearby, so he hung out with my boss in the parking lot till my shift ended. I'm a rideshare driver for Uber and Lyft. I've only had one ride I would truly say is creepy, and it happened 2 years ago at about midnight, maybe a little later. I often drive at night on the weekends near the local college campus in my area. I picked up one guy who was an engineering student, and he told me he was 21 years old. He was tall, thin, and wore glasses. I'll never forget him. Anyway, he was in the back seat and very quiet. I tried to make small talk with him, like I do with all of my passengers, and get to know him, but he barely gave any information about himself and would keep quiet. The ride only lasted about 6 minutes, but there was an eerie vibe from him. When I drove past this group of women walking down the street, he broke his neck to check them out. I don't mean a quick checkout like a very slow neck turn and just a glare. He kept his head turned as we drove away. Then, he told me to not follow the GPS and go to a different spot. Which probably comes as no surprise, the spot he wanted to go to was near the group of women. Normally, I would listen to what the passenger wants, but my gut instinct just couldn't trust this guy. I firmly told him I was dropping him off where I was supposed to. After dropping him off, he walked in the same direction as the women. I would have gone to the police, but unfortunately, I have no proof or evidence he was actually going to harm any of the women in that group. I used to have to deal with, interview, basically, members of the public on a one-to-one basis, and every so often this would involve walk-ins off the street. I worked for a citizens' advice style agency, which helped people with their problems, city taxes, social housing, this is the UK, I might add, and that sort of thing. One day I get the call from the front desk to go down and speak to someone, and there's this young, fairly clean-cut, pretty normal-looking guy. I take him into a side room to hear what he's got to say, and the way the room is set out is the desk faces the door and my chair backs onto the wall. So, we sit down, and I ask him what he's concerned about, and he starts talking. He makes absolutely no sense. Zero intelligible sense. Just rambling, word salad crazy talk. I think it may have been about a conspiracy against him, but it's pretty clear I'm in the presence of someone suffering from a fairly intense paranoid delusion, and I'm just trying to agree with him and stay on his good side. I didn't try to take it all in. No one could have. I've never been so scared. Terrified would be a better description. It's hard to explain the horror of being basically cornered by someone, with no way out except past him, who has completely lost their grip on reality, and you're just hoping he doesn't decide you're part of the problem. I managed to talk him down and promised to look into it, whatever it was. Basically managed to mollify him enough to usher him back into the lobby and get him to give his details to the front desk before getting him to leave. I remember at that point cold sweat was making my shirt stick to my back. I left that job a long time ago, but I've never again made the mistake of not giving myself a clear line of escape if things go south. I work on exotic cars and make certain ones street legal that normally wouldn't be. I did so many Koenigsegg's that the company now offers them in the street legal version. So a lady pulls up to the main garage door and beeps her horn like I'm an oil change or something. I had a car in the bay, so I walked out the bay door on a nice sunny day to see what she needed. In the car she was in, I couldn't tell exactly what kind of car it was until I got outside, and I couldn't tell how big she was either. This woman had to be at least 600 pounds, and she pulled up in a 1993 Jaguar XJ220, racing seats that seat a size 8 to 10 comfortably, $500,000 car. When it was made, it was one of the fastest out on the market. A little over 210 miles an hour for an hour was nothing to this car. The only way to make this car street legal is to take the engine out and take the car off the frame to make it collision safe. The engine is the only draw to it. You remove the engine, and you make a $500,000 car. Something nobody would consider buying. Yet she drove it to my shop. No plate or anything. This absolutely massive lady with crazy hair like a Cabbage Patch doll walks past me and says, "I need to see the manager right now." After I say, "Ma'am, this is not a franchise, it's me and 8 people. I am the owner." She tells me, "This is what you're going to do, so listen up. You take the engine out, keep the engine as payment, put a small engine in, and make the frame safe with bigger wheels and a more comfy seat." I tell her that I don't ruin cars, don't have any use for the engine, and am not accepting any new business currently because I am 4 months out. She starts cussing me out, says she is going to ruin my business, and says that she is telling people that I am not sensitive to her disability. Asked her what disability she had, and she said, macrocephaly. My mom, Indian queen, taught Latin. I looked it in the eyes and said, "Wait, in Latin. Macro means big, and cephalic means head. So you were telling me that your disability is a big head?" That was when one of my mechanics said, "What about the rest of you, you fat bitch?" So I corral him and apologize, but it is too late. This lady calls the police. My engineer prints the laws on the car and hands them to the cops. So of course she gets a ticket and an automatic impound. This lady came to my business by bus and sat outside in a lawn chair for, 3 weeks and stopped and started again a few times for, 9 weeks total. Yet, my customers didn't bring their cars to my shop, they shipped them. So it was just my 2 engineers and mechanics who didn't mind her at all. She was on disability, inherited the car, and couldn't afford to insure the car to get it out of the impound. For some reason she thought that keeping the engine would be payment and that I would have to do her bidding right now. The cops had to explain to her that I didn't have to do anything. Then when she said to the cop that my mechanic called her fat, the cop smirked and said, "Water is wet, you need to leave now." The ringer on this whole thing is that the car went for $93,000 at police auction to the mechanic who asked her, "What about the rest of you?" He bought it about 8 to 9 months after she stopped coming to sit in front of the shop. This kid, 24 years old, had that car for 7 weeks and sold it for $465,000 at an exotic car auction. His insurance to not drive it and not track it was $930. This woman didn't have $930 but could sit outside of my business for 9 weeks. When I was 15, I had hot pink hair and was working at the jewelry section in my store. This old man came up to me and asked if the curtains matched the drapes. Later when I took him through the till, he asked me if I wanted to come to his cabin and keep the house warm. This was one of the less creepy ones, but it was my first job, and he was the first creep I encountered. Same job, but I was 16. It was late summer, which is when the buses full of Jamaicans and Mexicans come to our lot. This happens every year, and I'm not sure why, but I think it was a work program, and their company would get money to come to our thrift shop and the KFC/Dairy Queen in our lot on their days off. I'm really not sure. There would be crowds of them coming in, and they, usually the Jamaican men, most of the Mexican men were actually quite nice, would group up on us young girls and make us extremely uncomfortable. I'd get told to smile, asked if my coworker on the till behind me was my mommy, and get told multiple times that they wished they could just stick me in their suitcase and take me back to Jamaica. Most often I'd get called baby or sweetie or just stared down the entire time they were in the store. Sometimes they would follow me. I remember one guy came in multiple times and would corner me and ask for my number and follow me around the store until my manager banned him. This actually made me and many of my female coworkers biased and prejudiced against any black, Mexican, or old man that came into our store during the summer. It took me a good year or so after I left to recover and not feel scared around older men of color/old men in general. I still feel bad because I'm sure there were some good men that I automatically assumed were going to harass me. I worked at a big box retailer in the electronics section, which was rare for women at the time in my store. I started getting a regular customer coming in and hanging around to talk, an older guy. I was 21, and he was probably in his 40s or 50s. He started out asking about gaming systems for his kids, but as time went on, he'd come by to rant about his ex-wife, his job, and his entire life. It was uncomfortable, but he always made a purchase, so the store leads didn't think it was worth making a fuss over. One morning right after the store opened, he came in looking extremely disheveled, acting under the influence of something, and puffy-faced like he had been crying. He started getting extremely agitated about his ex-wife, pacing and getting right up on the other side of the counter I was practically trapped behind. He started ranting about how his kids deserved a good mother, a woman like me, someone who would appreciate him and not be a bitch, etc., etc. Then he started rambling off facts about me, including how to get to my extremely rural house and what car I drove. I had absolutely no way to call for help, so I started jamming on the guest assistance button. After half an eternity of this guy screaming at me about how I should be with him, our security finally showed up and took him down. I seriously thought he was going to pull out a gun and shoot me or something. If there's a silver lining to the story, the store started taking employee unease seriously when it came to guests, made sure we had a panic button, and doubled up employees when possible in remote areas of the store. It was many years ago, but I am still shaken by that stalking. Every time a strange car drives by, I have fleeting moments when I wonder if today is the day I'll have to shoot the guy in my yard.